Hello, welcome back, and this is Fahad, and in this lab we will talk about electrodes for oil burners and how do we set up the gap. So in this lab we will identify the electrodes, see what they're made of, and how do we take them apart and put them back and adjust the gap between them. How they're replaced, how do we test the electrodes whether they're running okay or not, and how do we adjust their location properly, and that's very vital part for having good ignition and eliminating hazard. So to start, uh, here are my electrode assembly, and this is what we call the air tube, and this assembly goes inside the tube. So you can see how, of course, the nozzle goes in here. The oil line goes all the way here through the pump and pump oil at 100 psi through the nozzle, so the nozzle will go over here. The entire thing will go inside, and you can see that those electrodes have a certain gap between them, between each other and the nozzle, and also this turbulator plate. So you want to be in the right gap so we do not have any arc towards the tube. So they take the voltage from the secondary terminal of the transformer. Let me draw a transformer here. This is 120, and we have springs, and those springs connect to those two wires, and we have over more than 10,000 volts. Okay, we'll talk about the anatomy a little bit. What are the names, what are they called? So here are different types of electrodes. They're made out of ceramics and specialized kind of steel, and this is called the bus bars, and this is the insulation, the ceramic insulation, where we can connect that to the holder. And again, we are carrying 10,000 volts, so we want the most probable way, the most practical way to carrying through a conductor without losing any kind of voltage. So you don't want the voltage to go through the casing of the burner and cause some damage. So these are different type. And how do we test them? Usually the testing goes visually. It's a visual testing. What do we look for? We look for discoloration, cracks, discoloration, and veins. If there are veins in here, or grooves or cracks, that means it's a bad electrode, and they have to be changed. And make sure when you change them that we have the right size from tip to tip, because we want to have the right connections. Some of them connect to the transformer through wires, and some of them actually have the springs on the transformer just land on these two wires. For our testing, there is this tool which used to be a neon test. It's a light bulb where you turn them on and connect them to the boiler, to the ignition, and try to run this through it and see if it lights up or not. I haven't seen this in the field, so usually we just do visual inspection. Looking here, again, we said the gap between the tip of the electrode and the nozzle has to be precise. The gap between the electrodes themselves, usually as a general rule, it should be between 1/8 of an inch, but that's not always the case. But this is, if when in doubt, you can set it to 1/8. It should work okay. And also the distance further. So those two distances are very important, and make sure this is not touching the turbulator plate. And we want to also make sure there is solid connection between the electrodes and the transformer. So again, here's the gap, and here's the turbulator plate, and make sure that it's hoisted the right way, and this tip here is not touching the electrode, and we're not arcing to the turbulator or to the nozzle. So here we have 1/8, as we mentioned, and this should be 1/16 between the tip of the nozzles and the tip of the electrodes and the nozzle. Also, if you notice that those parts are burnt out or too short, probably it's time for you to change them, because they should be, usually they are very pointy as a tip. If we look and it's completely corroded, maybe we should get a new one. This is how we take them out. Of course, every burner has a different way for you to take the electrodes. In this case, because the neck we have here and the air tube is short, it's really easy to pull them outside from here. Sometimes you have to take the whole burner out and pull them from the front, so it's not always the case, but make sure to be careful when you take them that you do not drop them and you do not have them squish too much in here and in a way that it will crack. There are 2 or 3 videos on Blackboard for you to watch on how they are done. It's good to see how it's done. The pictures will not do it justice. Okay, again, here are my electrodes. This is electrode assembly, and this is what they call a gauge. This gauge makes it a little bit easier to to measure the gap between the electrodes. And again, the length is very important from tip to tip for the electrodes, and also the connection made with the springs here is very important. Some of these electrodes, again, they use springs to connect with the transformer. Some of them have to be clipped to the transformer, so pay attention to that, and pay attention that you use the gauge that is appropriate to your nozzle and your burner manufacturer. Here are some of the common nozzle gauges we see. The plastic ones came out really recently and it's very, very helpful. How do we use them? We place this face on here, front of the flush with the nozzle, and if you see this gap over here, this little tip, it should be the gap between the 2 electrodes. So that makes it kind of easy because it will set it in 3D and where it's supposed to be. And this is specific for Carlin, and this is for Beckett, and it's a Z gauge, so for a different model. If you look here, this gauge is very versatile, and you can turn it around to get the, if you can, I don't think you can see it here, this is 80 degree. So it's based on the degree specified on the nozzle. So when you look at a nozzle, you will see 2 things, the GPH and also the degrees, the spray angle, so it's always going to be H in the nozzle, so you can match the gap in here with the nozzle gap and the nozzle angle. For this Beckett here, this one, as you can see, it goes through the turbulator plate, and you should align. This will give you the distance between the, see this alignment here, you should align with the nozzle, and for the gauge it should tell you where this point should be, where the end of the electrodes should be. Okay. Again, this is a link for the YouTube and how to take apart the nozzle and how you put it back again. So by now, for parts of the oil burner, we did cover pump, bleeding and adjustment, motor, diagnosis, capacitor check, winding check, basic wiring, piping, threading, and copper pipe processing for oil lines, and now we did electrode adjustment. So we are trying to build up parts by parts what we need to know for those components that makes up the oil burner. Next week we will do a complete disassembly of the oil burner and putting it back together. It will be very good, empowering experience to be able to take it apart and put it back together and see it work. All right.